Hi, how to stay out of debt. Different than most videos you'll see on how to get out of debt, you first must try not to get into debt. Hey, this is Jeff at Below Average. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below. Stay to the end as I will more than likely be mentioning something that's probably not going to be, most people will not agree with. But if you're at like this channel, Below Average, these are some of the scenarios that you probably will get into or back into if you live long enough. That this might come on up in order to keep yourself out of out of debt. So please stay to the end to at least hear that. I'll try not to rant too much. Okay, first, like I said, this can be for people who are in debt, who are going to work their way out, which there's tons of stuff on YouTube about that. But how about this? The stay out of debt. So more than likely, this hopefully will appeal a little bit towards younger individuals and definitely into people who are married and looking to have kids or already have them. So the first one, especially somebody who's younger, and if you got a full-time job, if your spouse, I'm just going to say for an example that you have one kid, young kids already. Hopefully your spouse isn't having to work unless they have a high income job, that the cost of daycare and everything will definitely offset any kind of money made. So this example will be a little bit for you're working, other individuals, your spouse is raising the kids at home, working a part-time job. Here's the big one is you always feel like you have to have a new vehicle. And I understand that. I've been at the jobs for many years where you can't just call in on a breakdown and think your company's going to be okay with it and going to allow you to have a few days off easily. That scenario just sometimes just don't happen. So you feel compelled to always have a newer vehicle for less chance of breaking down. But if you do, that causes a high payment, which will put you into money problems, which is part of the debt. So here's the version, or what I feel and is what has worked for my wife and I over the years, is to have decent used vehicles. And here's the kicker: if you are the primary breadwinner in the family, if your hours, your shift is different than if your spouse is working. Now, if your spouse is working full-time, maybe a different story. But if you have young kids and you're trying to keep your spouse at home to raise the kids, which is the greatest thing to do, if your spouse has a part-time job, that make sure that that part-time job is offset by your full-time job. And by doing this, you'll be able to at least keep two older used vehicles, which you have a possibility of keeping the cheapest insurance, PLPD, if you need, on them, if they're that cheap. And if they're not that cheap, you'll have to have full coverage or some kind of comprehensive or partial. But by offsetting those hours, you eliminate the anxiety of, what if my car breaks down? What if I go to my vehicle and I got to go to work and it don't start? What do I do? I need a new vehicle. No, you don't. Two used vehicles. If you run into a vehicle problem, you always have the secondary one to grab and go, because your spouse, who only under this scenario, which is what my wife and I have done for quite a few years, you won't have to worry about it because of a different shift. You'll still be able to go. You can then work on getting the car fixed locally. If it takes them forever, you're just on to one vehicle for a week or so. And here's the kicker. What I say you should do, and I've said in my other videos, you must find somebody locally in your area that works on vehicles on the side, from church, friend, people at work that just even know somebody who knows how to do a lot of the basic stuff. And those are who you utilize, because for one, they'll know your situation. They'll probably say, hey, get the vehicle over here right away, or it can come over. They can work on the vehicle. The big one is the cost. Probably say 50% at least on labor. And that's the killer. That's part of the staying out of debt, or you'll have somebody capable of fixing your vehicle because they do it on the side. I've been fortunate my whole life of knowing some people like this, but I also have had to seek out new people, and you just got to ask. Um, there's people out there. They're all over the place. You just have to ask until you find one. Save you lots of money. And I've had it in the past where I've been in a pinch, and told them, hey, I can pay for the parts. Can you give me a week to pay for your labor? And these people, if you make a good relationship with them and everything else, and that doesn't happen all the time like that, then you'll be able to do that. That'll help offset that. Takes all the worries about I need a vehicle, I need a new vehicle. I've seen people do it at my job, and I've seen them get buried in debt, and the cycle, before they ever pay it off, it breaks down anyways, and the cycle keeps continuing, and it forces them to keep working crazy hours, all just to keep a vehicle that they need to hopefully it starts with. So hopefully you're not into that scenario. And if you're single and you have the room for two vehicles, I would look for having two older vehicles if you really feel stressed out about that scenario. Plus, nowadays, compared to when I was younger, you do have the crazy thing of calling Uber or Lyft to pick you up and take you back and forth to work. It costs you a little fortune for a week, but that is an option now compared to before. So you don't need a brand new, crazy, stupid payment vehicle, which comes with stupid high cost insurance, stupid high cost registration, all the things that'll drain you and put you into debt. So don't do it. That's probably the big number one to start off with. Number two, housing. This is one I brought up before. I would say if you're renting and you got for some crazy reasons, cheap rent, this is kind of referring to married individuals, but if not, apply it to your single self. But if you got some kind of crazy cheap rent, which is probably hard to find, that's a slightly different story, but never rent. I'd be looking to always buy or get out of your rent. See if you can move. If you're single, move back with your parents. Even if you're married, maybe for a very short term, if you can do that to save money, just because you are going to seek out a home and buy it, to go that route. Even if you become what I've had in videos, house poor, I guarantee you in 20, 30 years from now, you would rather have been strapped more on paying your house than still stuck renting 20, 30 years later, and you are done, you're devastated, your knees have been cut off, you will almost never be able to get into a home because you'll be too old. And time you get into there, you'll be working into your 70s or 80s or praying for some kind of, stupid scratch off money. So, and then obviously, if this channel is called below average, that you feel like you're in the struggling category, you're not making crazy money. So you're going to look for a lower end home. If you are making decent money and you can afford one of those crazy $300,000-$400,000 homes, don't do it. Look for something mid 200s, low 200s. Just look around so you can be smart. In 5-10 years, you'll be able to always have the upkeep on the house. You'll be able to have maybe even be able to pay it off because you went drastically the smart way and not getting into debt. So those are the things I would do. Obviously, like I said, things that I talk about can apply to if you have debt, what to do and not do. Now, the third thing, what people get into easily all the time, my generation was probably the first one to really get caught up into this, is credit cards. I've had that problem years ago. We had a bunch of them, had to use them to think we had to purchase things on them, had to buy this, all these things that you think you need, you don't. I only get one credit card, and that's because you need the stupid thing for flying, if you have to rent a vehicle for some reason, that's it. And do everything you can never to use it. Definitely don't use it for this time of the year, Christmas, or for a random birthday or anything. Don't end up doing it. You're going to get caught up into all kinds of issues. Now, if for some reason you're somebody who is not in debt and you make above the average income, or your spouse is working, both of you make great money, and you don't have any debt besides a house, you're living smart. Maybe if you had a card that you pay a lot of bills on because you got crazy miles or something for flying, and after so many years you could fly a place for free because you pay it off every month, that might be a different story. I've never known of anybody like that. Once they get into them, they're just caught and trapped. It can drive people to bankruptcy really fast. So don't do it. Have one card. I've lived through it enough times. When my whole life I've worked 2, 3 jobs. Sick of it. I hate to do it. For at least the last few years, I've been down to one job. I'll probably go back to 1.5 here soon. I'm thinking I might be doing a little something extra, but don't. So the credit card thing, pretty simple. And obviously, if you have a lot of credit card debt, you must work to get out of them and get down to only one. And that means doing some David Ramsey stuff, maybe selling everything you can to get rid of it. But the big thing first, if you don't get into it, you don't have to mess with it, right? So I'm getting closer and closer to the end of telling the one thing I know is going to be controversial that I have used. And at this point in my life, I'm still good with it because I think I know what the other route would have been. But okay, so you got the 3 things. Those are major. Those are easy. Those ones that can really devastate you. So the other areas about how not to get on debt is learning how to, you got to do a budget. I probably should have said this in the beginning. I've mentioned in every one of my videos, you got to have a budget. You got to write down every dollar you spend, put it in categories. And I swear you need to do this for 12 months to find all the little things that add on up, like Christmas, where you can forget. And you can actually see where you're going to be at. Then you can make a better decision, especially if you're thinking stupid about a vehicle and you look and say, hey, my bills every month are $2,500 or $3,000. I've been doing this for a year. That seems like how it is, and you're just barely making it. And all of a sudden you think, oh, I'm going to go out and buy a $500 vehicle. Well, you'll smack yourself upside the head and not do it then, because numbers don't lie, and you have been keeping track of them. You've been doing a good job, and you keep track of that, and you look at that every time you spend money. Go right to it, put it down, so you have it to look at. And this is great for showing your spouse, so they know where everything's at too. Okay, so back on track. So the next thing, especially if you're married, you got young kids and everything, the one thing if especially your spouse can do, that's probably going to be more, the female part of the that's going to do this, is cooking. Not going out to eat, not getting crazy on fast food, which is so easy, is actually doing some cooking at home. Be smart on what you buy when you go to the store. Don't be afraid to have to go into the store a few times a week if you can be strict on looking for specific things that are clearance or on sale, like the meats and stuff. Look at all the sale stuff when anything's really on sale. See if you can double up on a few things, so that'll get you by for the following week. To keep your food costs low. And you know how you'll know where your food costs are at? Because you are budgeting and writing it down every time, and you can make changes as you go. This will be able to help you stop going out to eat, which can also get you into credit card debt, because I'll just throw it on the card. I'll pay it off next week on my check, and the regular bills come due, the vehicle breaks down, somebody gets sick, or how about, the workplace says, hey, we're on 40 hours and you've been used to working 48 or 50 or 60 or some crazy thing, and you think it's going to last forever, which I've worked with people who thought overtime will last forever, and guess what? It never does. And can you imagine used to working 60 hours a week for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, and then the whole place shuts down and you have to go to a place that's going to start you off less, and they only work 40, maybe 45 hours? Yeah, bankruptcy, financial devastation, could be even marriage loss, the divorce, everything going haywire, all kinds of stuff. So don't get into being stupid and creating debt because you think you can just keep working. So don't do that. You'll lose every time. Every time you're going to lose. So don't do it. So that's a simple one as far as the food thing. Different things, places to go to. Look for your local Dollar Trees to help offset that cost on the food, if it's the junk food or just small things, or if you got an outdoor cat or dog or whatever. Those are places that end up saving some off your food bill. Once you keep track of it, that's what you'll end up doing. So that's a way to not use a credit card, to stay out of debt, don't overspend on food, and it kind of keeps you in line with that. Definitely with keeping track of it on a budget. Like I said, this is great where the spouse can end up seeing what's going on, so they just don't go to the store and just think they're just going to buy whatever, think so, because somehow you're going to pay for it. You're going to work hours, or maybe they're part-time, and they think, I'll just work an extra shift or two a week or whatever, and then that can't happen. If some of that's the case, like I can work a little extra, do it first, then buy it. Then you'll see how, let's see how this works. You put in a little extra hours after you've already been beat up, and see how bad you want whatever it is you think you're gonna put on a credit card. So don't do that, right? This is how to stay out of debt. So here's one of the bigger ones. I'll probably try to end it right in here. Is one example. If you get pinched in a corner and you have to do something where it's going to cost you $500 or $1,000, it's a must, and you can't do nothing about it. And maybe you can't even get a small loan for it. Or you go get the loan and then you can't pay it off, and all of a sudden you start feeling this is how this debt's going to overtake me. I can't work enough to cover it. If you had been putting money away in a 401k and you get into this crazy scenario that you cannot add any more debt, or you don't want to add any more because like me, been through it, that you can't just work your way out of it. That's not how things happen. Things in life will come up and smack you upside the head so hard you won't even realize it. You could pull some of that money out to end up paying that debt off, that part of the debt off, or pull money out to pay for what you were looking at, thinking, or feeling like you were forced to end up doing. Could be a major breakdown. Could be something crazy like that. Now, if you've had previous jobs and you still have a little bit in an old 401k, you can just pull it on out, pay the fees. Hey, the 10% sucks. Taxes you're always going to pay on it anyway. So when somebody says you're going to pay tax on it, well, you're going to do it anyway. So don't worry about that. The 10% does suck. But I tell you what, if it keeps you out of debt and that's something you have to do, then do it. Don't let debt overtake you and get so bad that you can't end up fixing it. Do that if you have to. I've had to do it in the past handful of times. Now my situation has been a little different, where I've lost a handful of jobs. Some of it I hardly had any money in the younger years. So sometimes we just pulled that extra. I think the first job I had, I'm going to say might have had $800-900 in the 401 because I was only there a year or two when they shut down. Pulled it out and we just used it to pay off a few bills that we were already behind on, just heat, electric. Bought a little extra food for the week, paying an extra payment on a card, these types of things. The second time I had, once again, we're in a lot of debt. I'm already working 2-3 jobs. What more am I going to do? I want my wife to stay at home. She's already working a tiny part-time job. Get caught up on a bunch of stuff. You can't work your way out of it. I lost another job at this point. So I went from making X amount of money, taking a big hit again, because this generation, everybody's working now who's kind of new in the workforce over the last 10, 15 years, 20 years. You haven't seen that. My generation I've worked with a ton of people, plus myself, that lost numerous of jobs. And every time they lost one, I'd say 9 out of 10 times they took a big pay cut. Took years. Took me 4, 5, 6 years to get back to what I used to make at the previous job. So some of those parts of the 401 over the years I've had to. Even when I got to the last job that I had before I quit years ago, ended up still having to pull money out of an older 401 to pay for things that broke down because I knew I couldn't work anymore. I'm already working enough. I'm working 2 jobs. With this one, working this job overtime and working a second one. How much more are you going to be able to work? At that point, my wife's longtime part-time job left. Never went back into the workforce at that point. So, it makes it a little difficult. So this one that I mentioned over the last few minutes is a very controversial. I would say don't do it. It's a last thing to do. Don't rely on always doing it. If you're actually at your job now and you have to do that, you'll automatically have to pay that back through your check and a loan. Now it still could help you get by. If it's something, then you can work on later. Maybe if you're not working a second job, you have to pick one up afterwards because you want to get a little money stuck aside, a couple grand or something in an emergency account in case something comes up again, so you don't have to pull from your 401. If you can do that, that's great. I never could. I was already working 2-3 jobs just to pay bills, just to pay keep everything going. Because every time I lost a job, took a hit on the pay, got dropped down $4 or $5 an hour. Takes 4, 5, 6 years to get back up there. I lost again, boom, down again, went back up again, bam, down again. And you do that over the course of over 15, 20 years. And next thing you know, you're 15, 20 years older, Boom. But I do appreciate I didn't get rid of the house. A lot of times we thought about getting rid of it. This is where technically we would be considered in our life house poor, having troubles to fix it up when things break and everything. But in the end, or where we're at now, I still got quite a few years to pay it off. But the money and the, how much we don't know on it now, the what's sitting as an asset is great. We'd never have it. If you're renting, you'd be screwed. And if we went back to a trailer, which I originally thought probably 20 years ago, that would be worthless compared to where we'd be at now. So, hey, have a great Christmas. Don't get into debt. Stay out of it first. Try to use some of these principles. Hey, make it easy. It's going to suck at first. You're going to hate it. But the longer you stick to your budget and seeing where you're at and how things go, the more I think you'll be comfortable with what's happening and where you're at and understanding the process. And sometimes don't listen to other people. That if you're working with people that are out there, if you'll know some of them where they'll be talking about money problems with you, and you already know they're making twice as much as you are, and you're thinking, you stupid idiot, how could you have money problems? You're making twice what I am. You're not even going through what I'm doing. There's a lot of that out there. So hey, please like, subscribe, comment down below. I appreciate you. Thank you. Bye.